Being rich and black means something, man.
When you got nothing and you want everything, you gotta get to be the Mack. If there's one thing tougher than being the Mack, it's staying the Mack. They got a contract out on you.
I'm gonna make you look like an ad for Swiss cheese.
The next time I hear about you trying to set me up, I'm gonna blow your heart out your body, sucker.
Who is the big man for 1972?
Goldie, you're getting too big.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mack of the year, Goldie!
Make way for the Mack, the biggest and the best.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're gonna kiss me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
This week on American International Podcast, we're diving into a landmark in blaxploitation cinema, re-released by AIP in the mid-70s. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And in this episode, we're strutting into the gritty streets and gold-plated swagger of The Mack from 1973.
The Mack was directed by Michael Campus, written by Robert J. Poole, and produced by Harvey Bernhard for Harvey Bernhard Enterprises, and released by Cinerama Releasing Corporation.
The Mack stars Max Julien as John Goldie Mickens, Richard Pryor as Slim, Juanita Moore as Mrs. Mickens, Carol Speed as Lulu, Roger E. Mosely as Olinga Mickens, Dick Anthony Williams as Pretty Tony, Don Gordon as Hank, William Watson as Jed, George Murdock as Fatman.
It also stars Paul Harris as Blind Man, Kai Hernandez as Chico, Annazette Chase as China Doll, Gennaro Jennings as Baltimore Bob, Lee Duncan as Sergeant Duncan, Sandra Brown as Diane, Christopher Brooks as Jesus Christ, Fritz Ford as the Deaf Sergeant, Nora McClure as the Big Woman, and David Morrow as Laughing David.
The Mack opens with a dedication card, In Memory of a Man, Frank D. Ward.
We'll talk more about him later.
The year is 1967. There's gunfire at a junkyard. Richard Pryor declares that they've been set up.
This is Slim, and he's talking to Goldie, the star of the show. Goldie commands Slim to split, and he does, scaling a fence, calling out Goldie's name as he drops to the ground.
Goldie jumps into a car and tries to drive off, but a shotgun blast shatters the back window, and the car hits another and flips. Sirens blare, and the police arrive.
These cops are Hank and Jed. It's the first time we'll see them, but not the last. They look down at the motionless body of Goldie. Jed calls it a gang war, but Hank doesn't care why people were fighting. They jokingly banter about just killing him right there. Then they won't have to call an ambulance. But Hank doesn't want to do all the book work that's involved with a dead body.
This whole time, Goldie is half-conscious, upside down in that flipped car, watching them debate about his fate.
And he's not able to do anything about it. They decide to go get a coffee, so I guess they do call the ambulance, because the next time we see Goldie, he's in court.
And it doesn't go well for Goldie. He's sentenced to 5 years in federal prison.
For unnamed crimes. And now we're in prison with Goldie in some incredibly tight close-ups. He's not having a good time.
But the time goes quickly for us because as the credits roll, Goldie is being released and we follow him on his bus ride home.
And Goldie's anthem plays over the credits, talking about the Mack. It's 5 years later, 1972.
But he doesn't go home. He stops in at a pool hall where he's meeting with his old boss, Blind Man. The Blind Man tells Goldie that he was one of the best that he had working for him. Goldie says he never stopped. He was just sidetracked being in prison for the last 5 years. Blind Man tells Goldie that he got a raw deal and that what went down shouldn't have gone down that way. Then Goldie remembers looking at the cops talking as if he were less than human as he hung upside down trapped in that car.
But now it's time to talk about the future. The Blind Man is going to set Goldie up in a new venture with a bankroll so big it'll look like his pocket has the mumps. And Goldie likes the sound of that. And what's this new venture? It's pimpin'.
Pimpin's where it's at. All Goldie has to do is get the best girls he can, and he can own this town.
A pimp is only as good as his product.
Can you dig it?
I can dig it. Actually, I can't, but that's another issue. And then Blind Man gives Goldie a piece of advice. Blind Man says that anyone can control a woman's body. The trick is controlling her mind. Pimpin's big business and has been since the beginning of time. And it will be until someone turns out the lights on this small planet.
We next catch up to Goldie at a disco where he bumps into Lulu. She's an old friend of his, and she asks how long has it been, about 5 years?
Lulu tells Goldie that she's been turning tricks here and there because any kind of better career is not something she sees as an option. But she's an outlaw, a rogue. She has no pimp. She begs Goldie to be her protector. promising to do anything he asks in exchange for her loyalty.
And the ability to pay the bills.
Yeah, that too. But Goldie has to think about it. She invites him back to her place later. It'll be like he never left, she says. Lulu has a trick to meet, so Goldie tells her to go do that, and he'll catch her later. Maybe.
When Goldie leaves, he's met on the street by Hank and Jed, those cops from 5 years ago.
They haven't forgotten about him.
They start provoking him, telling him that they've been bored the last few years with Goldie on a commission. Hank tells him that there's a guy dealing down the street and invites Goldie to go score some so they can arrest him. Goldie tries to just walk away, but Hank puts his gun to Goldie's head.
They'd actually like to make him look like an ad for Swiss cheese, they say. That's their real goal. And even though Goldie takes all this in passively, they still rough him up. They say that he needs to get his act together, and then they finally leave him alone.
And this is when Goldie finally returns home. His mother seems very happy to see him. She says she's had visions of him at church. Goldie tells her that he's going to make some money so he can get her a house and take care of her.
She'd prefer that he go to church, though. But Goldie balks at this confinement. And then he makes nice to his mom, who's about to fatten him up with a nice meal. And then we cut to Goldie's brother. This is Olinga. He's a leader of a Black Power movement. He's speaking to an enthusiastic audience, proposing a focus on creating a community for Black Americans that uplifts rather than sacrifices their sisters to the street and their brothers to drugs. Black America within, but without white Americans.
Goldie comes in just as Olinga is finishing up, and they embrace. Olinga is excited to see his brother.
They talk about their future, and Goldie tells Olinga that he's got a plan that he's going to put into action, but he doesn't give any specifics, so Olinga right-ons him.
Next scene is at a barber shop, and this is where all the pimps go to get their hair done, apparently, on the same day. They're all there, and they're discussing pimp talk things.
They're talking about the business, and one of the pimps is Frank D. Ward, who was mentioned in the opening in that in memoriam card. As he's getting a shoe shine, he's philosophizing about how to keep his bitches loyal.
Goldie is there, listening to this and soaking it all in. The next scene, we see Goldie in bed with Lulu. He's inspired. He says he's going to be the greatest Mack of all time. They're going to talk about him the way people used to talk about Jesus. There's going to be so much money. Lulu tells him he doesn't know anything about Mackin'. Everything he's gotten from her. Then they start to reminisce about how they met in school days. And this gets Lulu remembering her mother, and then she gets depressed. She throws herself over Goldie for comfort and falls asleep. Once she's asleep, Goldie stands and leaves her alone in the bed.
He goes to a mirror and looking in, he imagines his future in a brief montage. He's holding stacks of cash, trying on new threads, dispatching bitches to do the dirty work, and his theme song plays again. And lo, he's a Mack.
So Goldie, now wearing requisite pimp hat and driving a Cadillac, pulls up to a crowd of kids. He's become a hero to the neighborhood. One kid asks if he can get in the car, and Goldie tells him sure. Goldie slides over, and the kid takes the driver's seat, spinning the wheel. Then Goldie starts to hand out money to all the kids, but makes sure that they've all been going to school. He warns one kid that if he catches him skipping school, there'll be no more bread for him.
One boy says that he wants to be like Goldie, but Goldie orders him and the others to become something, anything else than a pimp.
There are a couple of women standing on the corner, watching this, and one complains, "Is that one of them damn pimps?" "It sure is," says the other, "and every month those kids will get their bread." "I don't care," says the first, "he's still a pimp."
They're conflicted.
And now Goldie is at a club meeting with Slim. This is the first time they've seen each other since Goldie's release from prison.
Goldie's telling Slim about a girl named Diane that he met at the white people's stables, and he wined and dined her, but tells Slim not to worry. He can have her when he's through with her. Gross. Then Goldie starts to wonder how the women he's exploiting participate in their own exploitation, and he can't understand why they let anyone else exploit them.
Then Slim tells Goldie that he'd heard Pretty Tony push the girl when she mentioned Goldie's name. Goldie wonders how safe a prostitute could feel walking the street at night, risking being robbed, then giving it to a guy. But he believes with the right man behind her, in this case, Goldie's talking about himself, they can all work together and make so much money.
Throughout this scene, Slim is wasted, and he's probably wasted throughout every other scene we see him in. Goldie promises him lots of bitches in his future. Next time we see Goldie, he's in a rich person's place, the marina. He's romancing Diane, promising to maybe share his bright future with her. They'll go all the way to the top if she's not afraid.
She says that ever since she first saw him, she wanted to touch him and take care of him. And he says, ditto. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to take care of her. He's going to be her father, her lover, her brother. All she has to do is do whatever he tells her to.
That is so gross. You don't want your lover and your father to be the same person.
Next, Goldie approaches a dumpster being guarded by Laughing David.
And it's pretty easy to see why he's called Laughing Dave. He's this cackling goblin of a character with an annoying laugh, and, well, he reminds me of the Joker more than anyone I've ever seen in a movie besides the Joker.
Goldie and Laughing Dave insult each other. Then Dave tells him the Fat Man wants to speak with him. Goldie tells him to tell the Fat Man to go play with himself. Laughing Dave stops laughing. He tells Goldie that he may be a greaseball today and he'll probably be one tomorrow, but tomorrow Goldie will still be black.
Wow.
And Goldie responds by picking up Laughing Dave and throwing him into the dumpster.
That's what you get for meeting by the dumpster. Now we're with Goldie and Lulu. They're giving some women classes on shoplifting and other crimes. They've got a whole store set up. They're practicing how to steal without being noticed by the staff.
Goldie's watching this until he gets a call. The caller tells him that Sheila says that Pretty Tony took her money. Goldie asks if she didn't used to be with Tony. Yeah, he's the one who turned her out, says the caller. Goldie says that she's conning him and that a sharp knife and a threat should get the money he's owed. And then shoplifting school continues.
And now we get to see one of those lessons in action.
There's an overweight chick in the bathtub waiting for the two prostitutes he's ordered to join him. They tell him they'll be right there. Then they go into the other room and ransack his place, take his money, and run out. The man throws a towel around his waist and runs outside after them. He calls out for the police, and one actually shows up. The cop is Sergeant Duncan, who is a black officer, doesn't believe the half-naked man who claims he was robbed of $1,300. He's going to take him in for drunken disorderly behavior when Hank and Jed come over. They tell Sergeant Duncan they can take it from here, and they explain that he has to learn how things actually work here out on the street.
Yeah, that man's not getting arrested. And now we see Goldie meeting up with the blind man on a random street corner. The blind man warns Goldie that though he's on top now, he's been set up for a robbery by someone called the Gambler. So Goldie finds the Gambler in his gambling establishment. He pulls a gun on the surprised man and says he'll let it go this time, but the next time he's going to pull a gun on his mom, his 2 kids, and his fat, ugly woman. And then Goldie shows him what he means by giving him a break this time.
Goldie grabs the Gambler, drags him out to Goldie's Cadillac, and throws him in his trunk. Before closing it, though, he dumps a bag of live rats onto the man's chest. Then Goldie slams down the trunk, gets in the car, and drives around, listening to the Gambler's continued screams from the trunk of the car. After a while, Goldie stops and pulls the Gambler out of the trunk and dumps him on the sidewalk in front of the hospital.
Now we have kind of a confusing scene.
Olinga and his activist friends stop the car they're driving and pick up a pusher. Olinga pushes him into the car and climbs in next to him. Hank and Jed see this and chase after the car on foot. But when the car is out of sight, Hank fires his gun 3 times out of anger. He complains that he was the best pusher they've got, and by the time they're through with him, he'll be a monk, and that means he and Jed will be broke. So Hank and Jed were allowing this pusher to work in exchange for some of his profits. Jed is sitting in the street trying to catch his breath from all that running and says his wind was better before he quit smoking.
And now we're with Goldie, who's being driven around by one of his lieutenants, Chico. Goldie realizes he can't see any of his bitches on the street, so he tells Chico he needs to put all of their heads straight. Just then we do see one of his bitches. It's Lulu. She runs up to the car distraught. She reports that her white trick robbed her and tried to kill her.
Goldie tells her that he doesn't care. He just wants her back on the street where she's supposed to be so she can get him his money. She starts crying again and stares at him disbelieving, but he shoos her away.
That's pretty cold. The next scene takes place in a car too, but Goldie's in his Cadillac driving around his brother, Olinga, bragging about his car. It's not really Olinga's thing, but he remembers how when his dad died, all he wanted to do was buy his mom a nice place to live. Goldie says that's still the plan, and he's going to do it soon.
Olinga is talking about how he's trying to clean up the streets and Goldie is working against him. But Goldie assures him that they're on the same side. The people of the street are his people. They're just taking different paths toward the same goal.
Then Goldie tells him he wants to demonstrate to Olinga how he gets his women under control. And it all starts at the planetarium. Olinga doesn't really find this amusing. However, that's where we're going. At the planetarium, Goldie puts on a show for his professional ladies of leisure.
As stars are projected on the dome, Goldie's voice echoes throughout, telling them what is expected of them.
Goldie tells him that in their organization, there is a president, a director, and a teacher, and all of those offices are held by Goldie, and anyone who opposes his will be destroyed. He has the woman repeat his rules in unison, and they sound a little brainwashed. He promises protection and riches, and to take them to the players' picnic and the upcoming players' ball.
Then he tells them to go home and get their beauty sleep, because tomorrow's a big day. A day of food, family, and fun for Goldie Incorporated and their families. So the next day is players' picnic at the park. Courtesy of a montage, we see people playing baseball, Goldie's pitching, and a girl has a difficult time with the drinking fountain.
When someone tries to hit on Lulu, she says, "Ain't no one getting laid today." It's their day off.
With it being the players' picnic, there's nothing to do for Hank and Jed. They go into a bar and ask the bartender where Goldie is. When he doesn't answer, they harass and threaten him. Hank wants to make sure the bartender knows who's the boss around here, and Hank asks if he understands. The bartender nods. "That's because you're a good boy," says Hank, patting him on the cheek. Then he gives him the advice to clean up his bar. It stinks.
Now we're at a Japanese steakhouse. Goldie and Diane are having an intimate dinner, as Lulu sits by the hibachi and eats by herself, carping about Goldie spending her money on some white trash.
She's saying this loudly, and the restaurant manager runs over and warns her to be quiet or she'll have to leave. Lulu starts flinging noodles at the manager, and Goldie jumps up to hustle her out of there.
And now it's later, and Goldie is leaving on his own. Outside, Jed and Hank corral Goldie as he's leaving. They're mad that he's at a fancy restaurant while they freeze their asses off protecting and serving. What's in it for them?
And Goldie has an answer. He tells them what their problem is. They want what he's got. His clothes, his women. He says they even want to look like him. And this last comment causes Hank and Jed to burst into laughter. And this seems to be enough reason to handcuff Goldie and drag him back to the station. At the station, the desk sergeant is taking a report from a man claiming to be Jesus Christ of Jerusalem. Occupation, carpenter.
But what he really wants is a quarter. Now we're in Goldie's cell, and Hank's visiting.
Hank says there's no reason they can't and shouldn't work together. Hank would like to be on Goldie's side. Goldie just has to play ball.
Or Hank can prep a jail cell or a table in the morgue for Goldie. Goldie says he gets the message, but he still tells Hank to go away.
In the next scene, Goldie is released and thrown into a car and taken to see the Fat Man.
In the Fat Man's place, that cackling goblin is there.
The Fat Man tells Goldie that he's been wanting to see him. He sent invitations, but Goldie hasn't accepted them. Goldie says he's been busy. Fat Man says they've had good times, and Goldie remembers those times and doesn't remember them as good times.
Fat Man takes Goldie onto his balcony and says that Goldie was the only one he could trust out there, but Goldie's not interested. The $2,000 he gets per week suits him just fine. Goldie points out his arm, the one where he injected all the Fat Man's drugs. He doesn't want to go back to the way it was. The Fat Man says that Goldie's getting too big and that's a problem. Goldie's going to go work for the Fat Man and tell his brother to cool it on his street crusade. And then they allow Goldie to leave.
Laughing David reaches out to push Goldie out, and Goldie warns him not to touch him. The next day, Goldie is meeting with his brother in the park near the basketball courts. Goldie says he will help Olinga get rid of the pushers on the street, but for obvious reasons, he wants Olinga to stay away from his pimping business. Olinga says that Goldie is putting him in a difficult position. He wants to get rid of the pushers and the pimps and hookers, but he also has devotion to his brother.
Goldie gripes that in his 5 years in prison, he didn't get one visit from his brother. Olinga said he was cleaning up the streets for Goldie. These two seem like they're never going to agree on anything. And now we have a very gross scene where Hank the cop is proclaiming his love for big, beautiful women while groping an unfortunate prostitute sitting on his bed. He starts talking about sneaky giraffes and trustworthy elephants. He's very drunk.
Giraffes can't be trusted because they're skinny and they'll sneak up on you. And that's why he likes elephants.
This analogy applies to women, and the poor woman who's being attacked here, I read that she's not acting. She really hated every minute of this scene.
Yeah, she looks really thrilled to be there. There's a knock on the door, and someone comes in and tosses an envelope of money onto the bed next to Hank. "Hank, you are slipping, baby," he says, and he leaves.
Hank calls that man a giraffe. Now we see that Goldie has made good on his promise to his mother. She has a new condo over at the marina. Goldie's mama says that she has 2 nice sons, and she's a very lucky woman.
It's night again, and Hank and Jed have just received an envelope full of cash when they're cornered in an alley by Sergeant Duncan. Hank says he's a white knight. No, he's a black knight on a white horse. Duncan is not amused, and he says he's got evidence, photographs, etc., that will take them both down.
Hank says that he can't understand why he's wasting his time following them when there's real crime out there.
Duncan warns them that they've got 24 hours to get out of this precinct, and Hank tells Duncan that he's got to be punished because of that, and he renders the punishment himself with a bullet.
It's pretty stupid of Duncan to go to them with this demand. That's what internal affairs is for. There's only one way that could have worked out. And now we're still with Hank and Jed, each armed with a shotgun, as they burst into a pool hall where Goldie and Slim are playing. They order everyone against the wall.
Hank announces that an officer has been shot, and they're certain the perpetrator is in this establishment. They decide that Goldie is the one who did it, so they bring him and Slim outside. Then they tell Goldie that he's free to go, and he should just go on home. But Goldie stands firm. He knows that if he turns around now, he's going to get shot in the back. So instead, Hank and Jed turn to Slim, and Slim has a breakdown, saying he's not going to run because he ain't no track star. As Slim carries on about how they're going to shoot him, Goldie turns around and walks away.
And where he ends up might surprise you. It's church. He sits in a pew, and in his mind he hears a preacher who seems to be talking directly to him, predicting a dire future for a man who chooses worldly pleasures over the spiritual. And I'm not sure that this memory works on Goldie. And then he leaves.
And now it's the night of the Players' Ball. It's gala night for all the hookers and pimps.
It's a big to-do featuring the most elite of the street.
The press is at the red carpet as the cars arrive. There are singers performing and people drink and party. Even Fatman is there.
And Goldie's a VIP, resplendent in a white fur coat. And he's with his entourage, Slim, Lulu, Diane, and Chico.
When the Fat Man notices Goldie walking outside, the Fat Man follows him. Fatman tells Goldie that he looks great, and Goldie tells him, yeah, he feels great. Fatman asks if he's high, and Goldie says he's not, and Fatman can even check his eyes.
Fatman gives Goldie a box. Inside the box is what I believe is a ticket to New York City, so that Goldie can do a job for the Fat Man.
But Goldie tells him they've been through this. The Fat Man has his thing, and Goldie has his. Goldie says he's got 10 working for him, and they each bring him $100 a day.
Fatman says he's not going to protect Goldie anymore because there's some kind of contract out on him. But Goldie's happy with his setup and doesn't want any part of the Fat Man's empire for any price because he hates drugs that much. The Fat Man is worse than cancer. He's a curse, and then threatens to drive the Fat Man back to the rat holes that he came from as the Fat Man seethes.
Fat Man is getting angry. He's come down here to see and talk to Goldie personally, and all Goldie does is embarrass him. Goldie says he's only just now realized why they call him Fat Man. It's not because of the size of his stomach or his wallet. It's because of his fat head. Goldie tells Fat Man to get down on his face, and Fat Man grabs Goldie's cane and, while staring Goldie right in the eye, snaps it in half before throwing it against the wall and going back inside.
He showed him. Now it's time for the awards part of this celebration.
They're about to announce the Mack of the Year.
I wonder who's going to win.
The third runner-up, Ted Ward.
One of the brothers of Frank Ward.
The second runner-up, Pretty Tony. The first runner-up, Frank Ward. And the winner?
It has to be Goldie. Tell me it's Goldie.
Goldie, Goldie, Goldie.
Woo!
If he accepts his award with dignity, I don't know what I meant by that.
When he first did the scene, he acted really excited and surprised, and Frank Ward told him that a real Mack would never do that, so he had to play it cool in this scene to be authentic.
In the next scene, Goldie walks into a room and finds Diane dead in bed from an overdose.
I think he hit his zenith, and now his life is starting to unravel here. Next, Goldie meets with the Fat Man in the Fat Man's car. The Fat Man tells him that he won't enjoy Goldie's death. Why wouldn't Goldie listen to him? This is when we start to get the clue that the Fat Man might be responsible for Diane's death. Goldie says he's listening now, but the Fat Man says it's too late.
As they're talking, a man starts walking toward them with an accordion. "Can I play you a song?" he asks the two men guarding the car. They're not interested in hearing a song, but the man says he's going to play a song for them anyway. He points the accordion and shoots the two men with it.
It's an accordion/cannon. And then Goldie's men surround the Fat Man's car, drag him out, and inject him with a fatal dose of battery acid.
As Goldie and the accordion player look on, the accordion player takes off his glasses to reveal his true identity. It's Slim.
Wow, what a great disguise.
And now we're back at the gambler's old place. The pimps are all there throwing dice, including Goldie and Pretty Tony. Someone comes in and asks if they heard that someone off the Fat Man. Slim said he heard something about that and that someone shot him up with battery acid. Nasty.
Then a hooker called China Doll comes in with her little white dog. She's defecting from Pretty Tony's stables because she heard him disparaging her and offers to go with Goldie. Pretty Tony explodes with anger.
Tony can't believe that one of his girls would betray him right in front of him like that. He can't do anything to her, so he confronts Goldie instead. I guess it's the unwritten law of the pimps.
Yeah, Goldie says that she chose him. So Pretty Tony changes tactics and calls him a car thief. Goldie snaps back that he bought his car for $35,000 cash. Can Tony do that? Tony looks sheepish. Tony threatens to make Goldie wish that he was never born. Goldie looks a little bit concerned by this. And then Tony says that he and his guys are getting out of this dump and they go.
In the next scene, there's a knock on a door. We hear Goldie's mom's voice ask who it is. "A friend of Goldie's," says the knocker, and she opens the door to find a gun in her face.
Now we're in the hospital. Mom is in a hospital bed. She's been worked over and has bandages all over her head, but she's still alive and conscious. Goldie's there. Goldie's mom tells him that she knew he would come. Goldie tells her that she's going to be fine. The doctor says so, and he's a good doctor.
She looks like she doesn't believe him. Then, just to prove he's wrong, she dies right in front of him.
And now we're with Pretty Tony. He's on the streets working over an underperforming employee when he's surprised by Slim and Goldie, who shoot at him.
Tony fires back and runs. Pretty Tony runs into a warehouse and hides around a corner. When Slim and Goldie come in, Tony jumps Slim and stabs him.
Goldie pulls a gun on Tony, and then, still holding him at gunpoint, forces him to stab himself in the butt in retaliation for sticking Slim. When they get tired of that, they tie him to a chair and tape a stick of dynamite in his mouth with a timer attached.
Goldie tells Tony that his mama was the most righteous woman that ever lived. Tony tries to protest, but he can't speak very well with a stick of dynamite in his mouth. A moment later, it blows, and Tony is sent through the window in flames. An ambulance is called. Hank and Jed on the street, near the explosion, comment that it's stuff like this that raises their insurance rates.
And now we're at a funeral where Goldie is tearfully apologizing to his dead mama and to Olinga, who scorns him for bringing death to their house. Olinga says that he's going to follow Goldie until he finds the killer. Goldie can believe that.
He's ready to take out all the trash on the street, even if it includes his brother. Goldie leaves the funeral parlor to find the blind man waiting for him. Blind man warns him that someone's put a contract on him.
Now we have a scene that starts to look like a caper. Some workers in jumpsuits go into a building. This is Goldie's apartment, and he's looking out the window. Slim lets the workers into Goldie's flat, where they tell Goldie who's watching him from outside.
Slim says that there's a couple of guys on the fire escape and a few more in a car outside. But Slim has a plan. They swap clothes with those contractors, and they sneak Goldie out past the hitmen.
They get into the workers' truck, drive it for a while, and then drop off Slim on a street, And then Goldie pulls the truck into the loading dock of a warehouse.
Goldie goes in, and it's quieter than he expected. He sees Slim's accordion sitting on the ground, covered in blood. As he bends down to look at it, Hank and Jed present themselves. Hank confesses to having killed Slim, then adds that he killed Goldie's mama, too.
And he wants to do it again.
Suddenly, Olinga pops out from the window behind them, grabs Jed in a chokehold, and strangles him.
Goldie pulls a gun on Hank and orders him to his knees. Hank tells Goldie that they're the same, and Goldie would have done the same thing that he did. Goldie says nothing, but gives Hank a bullet to the forehead.
Then Goldie walks outside to their car. Lulu is in the back seat. Goldie points his gun at her and cocks it, then throws some change at her and walks away.
And now we're outside the Sneaky Fox Pool and Hamburger joint. Olinga hugs Goldie goodbye, and then Goldie boards a bus on his way out of town. The song Brother's Gonna Work It Out plays us through the credits, and that's the end.
This is the American International Podcast, and we're discussing the Mack from 1973.
The term Mack is an American derivative of the French slang word for pimp or player, maquereau. A working or alternate title for the Mack was The Mack and His Pack.
Director Michael Campos is quoted as saying the original script for the film was written on prison toilet paper by Bobby Poole, an inmate of San Quentin. In August of 1972, according to Daily Variety, Producers Funding Corporation bought Poole's screenplay. Harvey Bernhard, president of PFC, made plans to produce the film in the San Francisco Bay Area with Cinerama Releasing Corp as distributor. Bernhard subsequently resigned from that organization and founded his own company and completed the film.
While staying in Oakland for 2 months, director Michael Campos met Frank Ward, a real pimp and drug dealer from Oakland. Max Julien's character of Goldie is based on him. The Mack was shot from early September to late December 1972 in Oakland and San Francisco on a budget of $250,000.
To shoot the movie, Campos needed Ward's permission because many scenes were filmed in his territory. In exchange for his guidance and protection, Campos put Ward in the film. Frank Ward had provided the homeless people, junkies, pimps, and women that appeared in the Mack, and Ward's brothers Andrew, Ted, and Willie also appeared in the film.
Despite having Ward's blessing to film on the streets of Oakland, there were still problems. In the documentary, Mackin' Ain't Easy, Campos also said the production had issues with the Black Panther Party while shooting. Quote, producer Harvey Bernhard said Bobby Seale, co-founder of the Black Panthers, barged into his hotel room one night and informed him that he and his crew were shooting in Black Panther territory. But Bernhard was not worried since he had the Ward brothers to protect him. Black Panthers founder Huey P. Newton wanted $5,000 in exchange for making the film in their territory. But the check bounced, Bernhard said. The next day when the crew was shooting, bottles and glass started raining down from rooftops, and the crew ducked for cover and scattered. Later, a donation that didn't bounce was made, and the production continued unimpeded.
Frank Ward was murdered in his car in Berkeley during filming, and though the shooter was never caught, Campos said in the documentary that the filmmakers and cast had to retreat to safer grounds in LA to finish filming. The Mack was dedicated to Ward in the opening credits.
In January of 1973, the Los Angeles Times reported that producer Harvey Bernhard signed Motown recording artist Willie Hutch to write an original score and title song for the Mack. The article also said Hutch would record the song for the Motown label, and they would release the soundtrack.
This was Max Julien's first lead role in a film. He made his professional acting debut at the New York Shakespeare Festival after studying at Carnegie Hall's Dynamic Workshop. He also appeared in off-Broadway productions, worked as a stand-up comedian, and starred in the musical The Beggar's Opera. At the time, Julien planned to record an album and wrote the screenplay for Cleopatra Jones and Thomasine and Bushrod, both of which he planned to co-produce.
Julien appeared in the film Uptight, where Juanita Moore played the role of his mother, as she did here in the Mack. Julien's mother had been murdered in a burglary shortly before filming on the Mack began, and he and Moore bonded on set because of this.
Julien told Charles Petzold of the Philadelphia Daily News that the scene where Goldilocks the gambler, played by David Moody, in a trunk with live rats looked real because it was real. We actually poured the rats on him, said Julien. He told us he wanted to do it that way for a sense of realism. I figure if the guy was stupid enough to want to do it, then we'd pour the rats. And they bit him. Julien did admit to some apprehension doing the scene, though, saying, sure, I was concerned. I didn't want to hurt the rats. Because of the camera angle we had to use, we had to drop the rats from high up. I thought it was too high for them.
Goldie's iconic white fur coat and his assortment of hats were Max Julien's idea, according to Odie Henderson in his book, Black Caesars and Foxy Cleopatras. The other flamboyant attire was designed by Mr. Marcus and June of Los Angeles.
The Mack premiered in New York on April 4th, 1973, but it was released elsewhere in mid to late March of that year. Max Julien toured several cities to promote the film, appearing before screenings of the film in cities like St. Louis and Baltimore. When the movie opened in Oakland at the Roxy Theater, the premiere served as a benefit for a clinic run by the Black Panthers.
According to Campos, in an article published in the LA Times 40 years after the film was released, quote, we couldn't play the so-called white theaters. People were afraid to go to these theaters, and the distributors didn't think the white audience was there.
Box Office Magazine recommended theater owners play up the movie's original soundtrack and to schedule events coinciding with Max Julien's promotional tour, allowing him to show off the white coat he wears in the player's ball sequence of the film, which they promised would receive enthusiastic response from black patrons.
According to Rob Craig, who wrote the American International Filmography, the Mack was reissued on a late 1973 double bill with AIP's Coffee, the first known AIP Cinerama collaboration. AIP re-released the Mack as a single feature in 1976.
Taglines for the Mack include, "Now that you've seen all the best, see the best."
Max Julien stars as Goldie. He's your friend. He'll stick your arm with a needle, then blow your head off with dynamite.
They're doing the job the cops can't.
There's a new kind of hero on the streets.
Make way for the Mack, the biggest and the best.
According to director Campus, again in that LA Times 40th Anniversary retrospective article, though the Mack played in little more than 20 theaters in African American communities, we outgrossed The Godfather and The Poseidon Adventure in those cities, he said.
Robert Taylor in the Oakland Tribune called the Mack the sickest movie to arrive so far this year. It creates vicious racist white villains so that black audiences can cheer when the black hero murders them in the movie's climax. This sick, sadistic movie uses a cover of conscience in the same way the blood and guts action comic books used to tack on a crime does not pay moral. Taylor also said the film was a tedious hour and 50 minutes because of the lack of continuity, the confused plot and characters, and the rambling right-on-man dialogue. The photography by Ralph Woolsey, however, is surprisingly professional.
Michelle Lomax in the San Francisco Examiner wrote, "The Mack is as corrupt as its hero. Its hero is a pimp, but he's a black pimp. His race, the film implies, expiates his sin. According to my articles of faith, a pimp is a pimp is a pimp, even if he is a brother. The Mack's romantic, sentimental treatment of the lowlife just won't wash." Robert Poole wrote the Mack as a morality tale on the evils of prostitution. Unfortunately, the film comes off as more of a symptom of an evil than a solution.
Kevin Thomas of the LA Times wrote, "The Mack is a lot more realistic and a lot less sensational than most black action pictures. But then, according to its director-writer Robert J. Poole, actually was a pimp, and every incident in the film really happened. It's easy to believe because the film has a ring of authenticity to it. The Mack tells its story so unclearly at times that it verges on incoherence, but it makes its larger points emphatically. Poole is gifted at dialogue, and the film's large cast is outstanding under Campus's firm, sensitive direction. The Mack possesses both a pulsating vitality, underlined by Willie Hutch's dynamic score, and a keen sense of tragedy."
Vincent Canby of the New York Times called the Mack a very noisy, very exploitative black film about the rise and peaceful retirement of a pimp. Quote, "I'm going to be the meanest Mack there ever was," Goldie vows. He then adds, "They're going to talk about me the way they used to talk about Jesus. That doesn't make much sense, but nothing does in this essentially sentimental melodrama." The screenplay by Robert J. Poole uses lines that seem to have been saved from a sophomore's notebook. Even as action melodrama of a Shaft sort, the film is inept, so confused that it occasionally seems surreal.
Bill Lane of the World News Syndicate offered this quote, used in ads to promote the movie. "The Mack is great, real. It makes Superfly look like a gnat. Max Julien and Richard Pryor are tops."
Joel Baltaki of the Philadelphia Daily News said, "The Mack spins the cold, unfeeling tale of a 2-bit punk named Goldie who breaks out on his own with the intention of sticking it to the man. Sicky thrills dominate the action. One poor soul is locked inside a car trunk with some screeching rats. This sequence leaves the audience laughing. Exactly who's sick, the filmmaker or the audience?" Baltaki did praise Julien's performance, saying, "Goldie has enough cool for a dozen Superflies and 10 slaughters, and Richard Pryor has fun in a big scene of nonstop cursing."
William B. Collins of the Philadelphia Inquirer was also not a fan of the Mack, saying, "To the list of criminal specialties of black movie heroes, we can now add pimping. It's just one more way to make it big in the ghetto. And the Mack is just one more exploitation picture. A little less coherent than some, perhaps, a little more flat-footed than others. The differences are hardly worth measuring. Max Julien projects a curiously amiable quality. He has such a seraphic smile that hasn't a trace of irony in it. He is such a nice guy you have trouble believing some of the nasty things he does."
Emerson Batdorf of the Cleveland Plain Dealer wrote, "Among black audiences, the Mack is able to generate excitement, much like old-time westerns on Saturday afternoons. There's actual cheering. This is caused in part by the bad guys, all the bad guys are white in the Mack, getting their just desserts, but partly too, the excitement seems to be generated by the feeling of identity with the characterizations on the screen. When small kids flock around the Mack's car and say they want to be like him, he says, 'Be a lawyer or a doctor, don't be like me.' So the picture pays lip service to morality, but there is too much killing and beating up for it to be really pure."
Box Office Magazine's review said, Julien, also a producer and a writer, at times seems too likable for his unsavory role. He isn't the Adonis-like hero of other black films, but he can ingratiate himself to an audience. Backing up the star are the solid performances of Richard Pryor and the other principal players.
After its release, the Mack gained an avid cult following. In a retrospective published in the LA Times in 1995, writer Todd Boyd called the Mack one of the most significant, though seldom seen, cinematic gems of the 1970s. It has not only lingered, it has built a huge following of devotees, especially among rappers like Too Short, who samples its dialogue, and cinephiles like Quentin Tarantino, who create homages on screen, despite the fact that the film is officially out of print. The Mack was scheduled to screen in Los Angeles in October of 1995 as part of the New Arts Blaxploitation Festival. Lynette Holloway, writing for the New York Times in 1997, compiled a list of hip-hop slang terms for the paper's readers, including the term Mack among them. She referenced Max Julien and the Mack, and then quoted Jesse Scheidlower, an editor at Random House, as saying the term wasn't used much since the film's 1973 release, but that it resurfaced 3 years ago, and today is used widely among rappers. Random House quoted rapper Notorious B.I.G.'s 1994 release Big Papa as a reference for the word's resurgence. Both Willie Hutch's original songs and the dialogue from the Mack were sampled by rappers like Usher, Dr. Dre, Chance the Rapper, Tupac, Jadakiss, Too Short, and Jay-Z, among others. In 2013, the Mack received a 40th anniversary screening at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, with Michael Campos appearing to discuss the film with Elvis Mitchell, then the curator of Film Independent at the museum. Quentin Tarantino supplied his personal copy of the 35mm print for the event. Also, Tarantino wrote a scene in his screenplay for Tony Scott's 1993 thriller, True Romance, in which the Mack is playing on the television. In June of 1997, the LA Times reported that a remake of the Mack was being talked about at 20th Century Fox. Elaine Dutka wrote that if producers Doug McHenry and George Jackson have their way, Goldie the Pimp will go back before the cameras in 90s garb, perhaps by the end of the year. The producers, who also made the movie New Jack City, approached Harvey Bernhard to acquire the rights. McHenry and Jackson had signed an exclusive deal with Fox, which was interested in a new version of the film. Dutka wrote, quote, "In the next week, screenwriter Ben Ramsey will submit his first draft of the script. If the studio reacts well, casting and budgeting of the mid-range picture will get underway." The producer said they had been besieged with requests to audition for Goldie, and mentioned Snoop Dogg as one of those in contention for the role. Although we don't know what happened to the movie that McHenry and Jackson were planning to make at Fox, we do know that Grand Rising Productions released Return of the Mack in June of 2025. In that film, directed by Kamal Smith, ex-con John Golden Mickens III learns his daughter is trapped in a human trafficking ring. Using his street knowledge, he must confront his criminal past and navigate Detroit's underworld to save her. The image of Max Julien as Goldie is part of the movie's poster, and the film features a scene just like the Players' Ball sequence in the original. So Cheryl, I think the Mack might be a film that has a reputation that precedes it. Did that influence your thoughts on the film at all? I wasn't really aware of its cult status or its influence on the culture that it has had since its release. I watched it pretty cold. I didn't know anything about it. And I have to admit, I was really underwhelmed by the movie. After we watched it the first time, I looked at Internet Movie Database's list of user reviews, and I was very surprised to find how many people absolutely loved this movie. I was a little baffled at that because it seems a little amateurish and not very well held together. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of money for the production, but it really shows. I think part of the reason that it was so successful is because coming more toward the beginning of the blaxploitation cycle, this was one of the first realistic ones that actually played. I mean, we talked about things like Blackula and Slaughter's kind of a superhero, at least a wannabe, and Blackula's a vampire. And this is a gritty street drama. Well, when I learned that director Michael Campos had done a lot of documentaries, then everything really fell into place for me because this feels like it could be a documentary. This feels like a real slice of life, like you're actually watching this stuff happen. Like the Players' Picnic, when they're all out at a barbecue, they're playing ball, they're having fun. It feels so real, and it must have been real when he shot it. On the second viewing, I got a lot more appreciation for the movie and the story. But just knowing that it's almost cinema verite made it make more sense to me as a film. Well, the more you know about the film going in makes that even stronger because, as we said, Frank Ward was responsible for bringing in basically all the extras, and they were real people of the street. They were the real homeless people and the real prostitutes and the real pimps that all appear as background characters in this film. It feels real. Pretty Tony sitting in the barbershop talking about his philosophy. They probably just had the camera rolling and just let him talk. That must be what happened because it feels just like that. This is just their life and they're talking about it and it's so real. Which is why it seems maybe not a totally professional movie in terms of being scripted and manicured. And watching it the second time, I could see that this is something else entirely. And I was looking at it all wrong. I had the wrong expectations for the movie.
Speaking of that barbershop scene, I have to wonder how realistic that was, that they were all getting their haircut at the same time, because as we said, these pimps would have had their own territories, and I'm sure they weren't best of friends, or they'd be hanging out together and exchanging war stories.
Well, the barbershop is not just a place where you get your haircut. It is a place where you meet with people, and maybe they're business associates, maybe they're friends, and maybe you're not all besties, but still, it's just a place to hang. And that's what they were doing. They were hanging, they were talking. Some guys can be business rivals, but then still be civil to each other. So it made sense to me. I thought it felt realistic.
And I guess we did establish that the entire Ward family was a family of pimps.
It's a family business. I do like Max Julien in this movie. I think he's very good. I think this might be another reason why I didn't really care for the movie at first. Goldie is so terrible to the women that work for him. He has such a user attitude towards his product. They're not even people to him. And Lulu was his friend. I wouldn't say girlfriend, but they slept together. She was someone that cared about him and wanted his protection. And he treats her abominably. I guess she retaliated by informing on him to the cops when they were looking for him. And that's why he almost shot her and then just threw change at her.
And the women don't have anything in this movie. They're just props.
The product. They're just merchandise.
And the one thing that they could have done differently was the character of his mother could have had more to do and kind of been a beacon of light that Goldie could work towards.
She tried, but he wasn't interested. She was a one-dimensional character. She's the saintly mother.
But she's the one character that they could have built up to go beyond this one-dimensional thing that they're stuck in.
She could have called him on all his crap and made him behave, or try to anyways.
At least lay a guilt trip on him, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, geez, my mom did it all the time.
So that's kind of a missed opportunity, I think. And it's probably one of the things that really dates the film more than anything else.
The treatment of women?
The treatment of women in this, yeah.
Yeah, it is very callous and very dehumanizing. We're supposed to like or admire our hero, even if he's an anti-hero, but his attitudes are really bad. Yeah, we root for him against the cops, but is he really that great of a guy? Not really. What he's doing is pretty reprehensible.
With the storyline of the rise and fall of this man, it reminded me a lot of Black Caesar, which kind of ran along the same lines.
Mm-hmm. And he was pretty reprehensible too. I did not like him as a character.
Yeah, he was in New York and this is in Oakland, so they're on the opposite ends of the country. So the similar things go on in each end of the country.
Well, Black Caesar had to go to Los Angeles, remember? That Godfather sequence with the house party that got blown away.
At Larry Cohen's house.
Yeah, no, that was a lot flashier of a movie than this one. This is a lot more understated. And it seems like Max, well, for one thing, I thought it was hilarious how he dreams about being the Mack, and then the next day he is the Mack. Even though they did that montage, there's no real buildup. We don't know how this came about. It just is. And this movie's long enough. It doesn't need to be any longer, but maybe a little less picnicking and a little more explanation on how this all came together would be in order.
Again, that same use of the montage was used in Black Caesar for his rise to the top of his game.
But that one made more sense.
That was because he was at least firing a machine gun. He wasn't just dancing with money.
I mean, where'd the money come from? I guess the blind man set him up.
We last saw Max Julien in Psych Out.
Yeah, I remember.
He was Elwood, and Elwood was kind of a goofball. He was always high, but he was a very likable character. I don't know that Goldie is a very likable character.
Well, he's a main character here, and Elwood was just a side character. The story wasn't about him. He just popped in every once in a while. And here, Goldie has to carry the entire movie. And I think we're supposed to be conflicted about him a little bit. But again, he's the hero of the film. But we see Goldie lose everything in the end. His mom is dead. His girlfriend's dead. His business is kaput. He had to kill 2 cops. And then he had to leave town. Is this really like a hero story, or is this something else entirely? I think that's the one thing that actually saves this movie is the ending.
I think that's a question that the film is kind of asking. Is this supposed to be a celebration of the Mack life, or is it a condemnation of it?
It might be a little of both.
It feels a little of both.
And can you have your cake and eat it too? Can you have it both ways? I think the film is trying. I don't know that it's entirely successful, but who am I to diss a movie that's been adopted as a cult classic and basically a legacy film?
I think that's part of the film's problem, is because it does try to do it both ways. And I don't think that it can do that fairly.
The movie sets him up, takes him to the top, and then gives him a downfall. So maybe they can have it both ways, because he didn't get to enjoy his ill-gotten gains. Not really. Not for very long anyway. He didn't even get to keep his car.
And I think even bringing in real pimps, the Ward brothers, to be characters in this would play against it being any condemnation of the lifestyle.
Well, they're not in it very much, but they are in the crucial players' ball scene. I think that's one of the things that makes this movie so iconic, that scene. It just comes out of nowhere. Like there's media coverage on a pimp awards show. really? The player's ball, I guess, was a real thing. And then after this movie came out, it became something that continued on for however long, possibly through today. Yeah, would that really be the case? Would a TV station send a reporter to cover that? Seems unlikely. So I don't know. It seemed more fantasy than reality, that part of it, where everything else was gritty and real. And that just seemed sort of like a wish fulfillment sequence.
I think one thing this film did, though, was it really cemented the look of the pimp.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It became representative of the lifestyle. The look, the flash, the clothes, the shoes, the hats, everything became this goal that you had to attain. It's how you know you've won when you get to that level.
We talked about, we didn't mention this, but when Goldie is eating lunch with his brother and Olinga's telling him how he's trying to clean up the streets, and Goldie says that being rich and black means something. So he knows that this is what he needs to obtain, and it's a matter of pride.
Yeah, I think it's an identity thing for him. It's how he sees himself. Yeah, criminal, and he's using people, but having all that money makes it worth it. He can live with it because as a black man, formerly a poor man, this is something that he needs in his life. And so it doesn't matter what his brother wants him to do or his mom wants him to do. It doesn't matter who he has to fight. He needs to be on top for the wealth, for the status, for the power that he gets from this. It's the most important thing to him.
Besides Max Julien, there's a couple other familiar faces here. We saw Don Gordon in Slaughter. He was Harry, the guy who was assigned to work with Slaughter. And we haven't done it yet, but we'll see Carol Speed and when she shows up as Abby. And of course, there's Richard Pryor, who appeared in a small part in Wild in the Streets.
I remember that. He was a drummer.
It was also difficult for him to find work after that because of a story of him urinating on Shelley Winters.
If true, I can see why.
And Max Julien claims that it was he who got Richard Pryor the job, and they had a really great time working together. And you can kind of see that on screen, the way they play off each other. Their dialogue, a lot of it's improvised.
Because Richard Pryor was high throughout the entire movie, what I read. And so they just kind of let him go.
Well, they both did that. And their dialogue is very real because it just meanders and runs. And there's a lot of stuff being said that doesn't really move the story forward. It's just conversation.
The constant right-on mans. I don't know if that's what they actually say, but it does seem like a couple of friends just shooting the breeze and not really saying anything that the script would have them say to propel the movie forward. So it does seem a bit draggy at times. I do think this movie is too long. It's an hour and 50 minutes. And a lot of that is this slice of life realism that gets thrown in there that really detracts from the plot, I think. So I think some judicious editing could tighten this movie up and make it work a lot better. And that's not to say I don't like the movie.
So why don't you tell me how much you did like the movie using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic.
Well, like I said, my initial impressions of this movie were not good. And I don't know, maybe I was having a bad day or something where I just wasn't in the mood for this movie. But the second time I watched it, and obviously every time we watch a movie for the second time, we're thinking about it very deeply. We're taking notes on the plot so that we can relay the story to you, the listener, and make sense of it ourselves. And that gives us a better chance to judge the movie. And I think that's what I did watching it the second time. I gained a bigger appreciation for it. And also by that time, I had done a lot more research on the movie and had found out a lot more about the making of it and the impact it's had on popular culture. And I gained a greater appreciation for it. So I probably would have given it an I initially. I think I'm going to bump that up to an A because as maybe not a movie, but as a sort of documentary, I think you should watch this. I think it's an important movie and I think it's well done for what it is. It looks very cheap, but it's very effective. So yeah, I think I'm going to give this an A. It's not an A+. It's not going to be my favorite blaxploitation movie even, but it's good. What do you think?
I think in terms of blaxploitation, it's really low key. There's nothing really over the top here. And the fact that, as we said, it was made by a primarily documentary director, I think is what really gives it the stark realism that it has. There's obviously a lower budget in use here. You can tell because the lighting is not great through a lot of the film. And
those tight prison shots were a giveaway too.
And even the sound isn't always there. It reminds me of the problems I had with Cooley High the first time I tried to watch it way back when. I was turned off by the audio quality and almost missed out on a really good movie. And there's a lot of that here. I think it's interesting that this movie is really important in the history of Black cinema. And, well, like most of the movies from this era, it's directed by a white man. And it really wouldn't be until almost today when Black directors are really coming into their own and getting a chance to tell their stories. Well, in the last 20 years or so, but today I think they're becoming even predominant. I mean, we're looking at films made by Jordan Peele and Ryan Coogler, and a lot of the stuff they're doing is much better than the other mainstream stuff that's coming out.
I thought Sinners was the best movie I saw all year. I still think that.
And watching the trajectory of these films, it kind of all starts here with the Mack. So historically, it's a very important film. And just based on that, it deserves an A, but it's also an interesting story. It's very similar to Black Caesar, which I also gave an A to, by the way. And this definitely is a movie worth watching, and probably watching more than once, because you're probably going to miss something the first time, unless you listen to our podcast and we caught everything for you and caught you up.
Probably not. That was my experience too. Watching it the first time was not enough to appreciate it.
So I'm going to give the Mack an A as well.
And if you want to share your thoughts on the Mack with us, the place to do that is on our website, aippod.com. And while you're there, you can find our past episodes. You can find links to our social media. You can browse other media like movie posters, lobby cards, trailers for the films that we've covered. And that's where you can leave us a message. You can argue with something we've said in the past or request a movie that we might look at in the future. And we have a request out for movies that we haven't been able to find yet. So we'd love it if you could look through that list and contact us if you know where to find any of those films. There's a store on our website, and any purchase you make from it supports the show and it helps us keep the lights on. Head over to AIPpod.com. Everything you need is there.
Before we roll out in our Cadillac, I just want to remind you all that I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.